listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and this week we're going to be talking about podcasting. So a podcast about podcasts. I've been creating this podcast for a few years now, but I've never done an episode on podcasting because I felt that it was quite a niche topic. I didn't think there would be many sellers that wanted to start a podcast, and so I never really got around to it. But it is a pretty strong form of long-form content, just because it's not the most popular one. I know blogging is probably a little bit more popular. Doesn't mean that it isn't on the rise. And I will share some interesting stats with you just for fun, just in case you were kind of like, ugh, is podcasting really that hot? Basically, there are over 6 million podcasts, I think, out there these days, which is pretty cool. And about 546 million listeners worldwide. And I saw a stat that said nearly 60% of consumers in the US, in their like 20s and 30s and stuff, listened to a podcast in the last month. So it's a very kind of up and coming popular form of content. I definitely say it's like the really kind of hot thing right now. Feels like everyone has a podcast. People love listening to, comedy ones and political stuff and all that. But education wise, there is that opportunity if you're a teacher or an SLP or whatever, and you want to create a podcast that's sort of around your niche. And in theory, you would, create one and share tips and stuff, promote your resources, whatever, kind of like a blog, but just audio. And it would be to promote your TPT business, basically. Before I do talk about creating a podcast, which is kind of what this episode's about, I still want to touch on the idea that you don't have to create a podcast in order to benefit from podcasting, which is pretty cool because some of you listening might just think, hey, podcasting is probably not for me. If you don't want to start one, you can be a guest on one or many. That's totally up to you. And it's a really great way to grow your business that doesn't require, obviously, the legwork of creating a podcast. So you could send emails, that's, or other kind of contact forms or social media messages, whatever your preferred messaging is. And you can reach out to people who host podcasts in your niche. And you can say like, hey, my name is Janine. I'm also an SLP and I'm blah, blah, blah. You can kind of, connect with that person, or it could be someone you've already connected with, which is always even better. And you can offer to go on there and talk about something that you're really experienced with, something that you have a lot of wisdom around, tips and helpful strategies that their listeners would probably benefit from. You could say, hey, these are the topics I know a lot about. Would you like that kind of content? Or they might suggest things, hey, I would rather talk about this, whatever. And then in return, by being on that podcast, it is a way to technically promote your business. And so I've had many guests over the years on this podcast. A bunch of them are just amazing, lovely sellers who just very kindly offer to come on, and they don't really get anything in return. Like, they're not on here to promote their business because other TPT sellers aren't their ideal audience. Like, they sell, resources to second grade teachers. You might not be a second grade teacher. Like, they're not really getting anything out of it. They're just out of the kindness of their hearts have come on to share their tips. And that's really sweet. But I have had people come on who are running a business and have actually kind of benefited from being able to sort of say, hey, I'm a VA and these are my services, or there's a link I put in the show notes to that person's website or social media or whatever. And so, I've had people come on that way. Most people that come on my podcast are just people I've kind of connected with. But I remember actually having one person who kind of officially reached out to me. They didn't know me and they were like, oh, I'd love to come on. And that was a way to sort of grow their VA business and stuff. But obviously, it's benefits both parties because for the person that's hosting and for the listeners, it's lots of free tips and info. But it can benefit you as a guest if you come on and you get to share links in the show notes and you get to mention your own business, which is kind of cool. So that's an option for you. If you don't want to start a podcast, you could always be a guest on someone else's, something to think about. But let's talk about starting one. If the idea of podcasting has kind of been intriguing to you, remember we've got 3 forms of long form content in the TPT space. Most people do blogging, have a website, have a blog, whatever, and write blog posts. Blogging's still great. I personally find it one of the most profitable ways that I grow my store. Like, blogging and Pinterest work together as my biggest traffic driver. So not going to throw any shade at blogging. Definitely not. It's really, really awesome. But it is a really quite old form of long form content. And you will hear a lot of people say, blogging's dead, blogging's going out of fashion. And I guess some people are too time poor to read posts, or they don't have the attention span, or they don't like reading. And yeah, blogging's not for everyone as a user. Like some people just don't like consuming content that way. And I think the other thing as well is that blogging's not for everyone as a content creator, because it can be quite a lot of work writing if you don't like writing. You obviously, the other form of long form content we've got is YouTube channels, like, video. And again, that's not for everyone because some people don't want to be on camera. Like right now, I'm in like this comfy t-shirt. I've just washed my hair. My hair's like up in this like little hair wrap thing. I look not very presentable, got no makeup on. I'm so glad no one has to see me right now. So YouTube does require a bit of that glamour, unfortunately. And then as a user as well, if you don't want to like sit and watch something, sometimes that requires that extra effort. I think podcasting is cool. And the reason I think it's become really popular in the last few years is because we all know we can just listen to it while we're doing other stuff. That's the truth of it. And I get so many people say, I listen to your podcast on the way to work, while I'm driving, or I'm driving in my car or whatever, or I'm cleaning the house and getting other stuff done. So yeah, if you're right now driving or cleaning, hi. But yeah, it's just the kind of the thing that's really popular right now for that reason. And I've definitely found myself doing that. Anyway, pretty cool idea if you're interested and you don't, hate the sound of your own voice. So the really cool thing about it is just, I'm just kind of talking first about why podcasting is great, just so in case you're thinking about it. You can use it to grow your email lists. You could, mention your lead magnets and stuff. You can link to your socials. So you can sort of say, hey, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, join my Facebook group. You can use it to grow other parts of your business, basically. And of course, best of all, you can mention your resources. There's definitely no harm in talking about resource. So you're like giving tips about behavior management, classroom management, that kind of thing, because that's like your niche or that's just the topic of the week. And then you say, hey, if you've been really struggling with this, I do actually have a resource in my TPT store that's really, really great. And it's these reward stickers, well, whatever. Anyway, you can like link to it in the show notes. You can kind of talk about it and sort of sell it like you would with a blog post or a YouTube video. So it can be a way to make money. And then, of course, if you want it to be profitable, your podcast, there are other avenues too. So a lot of podcasts go for ads, sponsorships, affiliates. Like you could share affiliate links, but you can have other ways to monetize it. So it's not always going to be this thing that just drains your time and isn't profitable. It can make you money. But the big thing is it sets you up. I think it's like a great way to build authority in your niche, build that trust factor kind of thing. I mean, honestly, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm not really getting much out of this episode, for example. It's really just, going to be a lot of sharing free tips. I wouldn't say the average podcast episode is going to bring me the same kind of money as when I sell a resource, like ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's long form content is more about the long game. So you're thinking about how can I serve people? How can I be that person that they want to come to when they one day do want to buy something maybe? And that's I do love the podcast though. Mostly it's just because I just like it. I think you do have to enjoy it, but there can be, benefits too in the long run. Anyway, let's talk about the steps to starting one if you're interested. First up, I just want to say though, don't go diving into starting a podcast if you are brand new to TPT in your first year. I don't think it's wise to do any long form content super early. You should be just focusing on creating resources, optimizing resources. And if you really want to, in your first year or so, you can start maybe one marketing platform like Instagram or Pinterest or whatever, just to kind of grow your audience. But I wouldn't be diving into this super early, because if you're spending hours creating podcast episodes, that's time you're not making products. When you're brand new, that would probably be a poor use of time. So not great for newbies. If you're established, it's a great option though. And so if you're not into the idea of blogging or YouTube and you really want a long form content, podcasting is great. But the first step is to check that there is a need for your niche/topic. So I just, you don't want to go into putting time and money into starting it and then you kind of find out down the line that it was never something people really wanted, or, just be absolutely sure that there's sort of room for your podcast topic, if you know what I'm saying. And you do need to sort of niche down a bit. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm just making a teaching podcast. It's just too broad. When you zero in on a niche, and that's applicable to anything in business, you will attract more specific, engaged audience members. And so, you're thinking about, well, what unique perspective can you bring to your topic? But yeah, so assuming you've got a niche on TPT, hopefully you should have a sort of corner of the market that you can say, hey, this is for kindergarten teachers or whatever. Anyway, I think the next step is to also make sure you have a little bit of an audience. And this is why I say you shouldn't be in your first year of selling on TPT, because you don't have anyone that's going to come and listen to your podcast. I started this podcast at least 6 months after I had created a Facebook group and an Instagram, and I'd sort of create this little community of sellers. It wasn't huge back then, but it was like I had a few thousand followers on Instagram, that kind of thing. My group was growing. I probably had at least 1,000 people in my Facebook group. Like I tried to establish myself first so that I had people that I could bring to the podcast. I think that's something to keep in mind. So if you've got a social media platform, that's great. But if you don't have any forms of marketing, I'm not saying you can't start one. Podcasting might be the way that you attract people, but it can be helpful if you have a way to sort of launch the podcast to even just a few people. Otherwise, you're going to be a bit sad if you put this effort into this first episode and then you get literally 0 downloads. That would be a bit sad. So I think it can be good to have a bit of an audience first. That's just my thought. So you do next up need to choose a name, and it should be specific, it can be quite succinct, memorable, kind of similar to your niche, your name, your brand, that kind of thing. Obviously, make sure as well that it's available so that, it's not someone else's social media or domain, or they've not used it already for a podcast, that kind of thing. Just do your due diligence. But yeah, it can probably be something to do with, you might even be like similar to your store name or your actual store name if that works, but totally depends. You could have a look at other podcasts in your niche, like what kind of names have they gone with, because that gives you a little bit of an idea. But I'm, with mine, the terrific is because that ties into my business in general. I've got the word terrific in mine. The teacherpreneur, so that, it's for people that are teacherpreneurs. It's not actually saying like TPT or anything, but it's kind of giving you the vibe of what it's about. Next up is you can start with all the like equipment and all the sort of platforms that you need. Now, I will just throw in here that I actually took a course when I first started my podcast. I like courses, hence I create them. I talk about how great they are. And I don't just talk about them because, I sell courses. The reason I rave about courses is because I take them too. They are so great. So instead of spending, hours and hours and hours YouTubing, Googling, reading articles, tearing my hair out, getting stressed out, whatever. It's like spending all this time and energy. I joined a course that helps you create a podcast, that teaches you how to do podcasting, just so that, I could consume a bit of content and be like, oh, okay, I know exactly what to do. And it was really good. And it just like told me all the steps, kind of like this episode. So I felt really set up. And that was hosted by another TPT seller. Her name's Trina Debery, but she's really, really nice lady. I will put a link in the show notes to that, just in case you happen to want to check it out. Like I said, I thought it was great. It's called Podcasting Academy, I think, for teachers and teacherpreneurs. So whether your audience is teachers or like me, sellers, whatever, it would be fine. And Trina's really nice. I messaged her just to check. I was like, can I mention this on the podcast? Like, I really enjoyed it when I took it a few years back. And she's like, yeah. And she's such a sweet lady. She said that if you want to join, there's a 20% off code you can use. And so if you type Baxter, like my last name, BAXTER, I think, in her coupon box, I'm assuming, you could save 20%, which I thought was really nice. So thank you, Trina. Thought that was really great. So you've always got the option there. Podcast course is one of the things I did just to kind of help myself. But hopefully this episode also gives you some tips. So like I said, the next thing is just to kind of get yourself set up with things. You don't need a fancy mic if you don't want to. If you can't afford to invest when you're first starting out, you could just, use your laptop or whatever, and I'm sure the audio would be okay. But if you are in a position to afford it, or later on you want to get a mic, I did actually start out with one. I just wanted to start off with hopefully decent audio. I use a Samsung QTU, and I will link that in the show notes. I'll try and find a link for it if I can. I bought it obviously here in Australia. It was about 120 Australian dollars, but that's about 70-ish, I'm guessing, US dollars. I will put a link in the show notes. I'll try and find like an Amazon link or something. Okay, and then I use a program called Audacity as my sort of editing and recording software. And this is fun bit for this one is it is free, so you don't have to go and pay for something fancy here. And it's nice when things are free. It's called Audacity, and that's like the thing that I like click record and literally record the episode on. And then obviously you can do all the editing. And I highly recommend, if you can afford it, once you get to that point where you know that podcasting's for you, you've done a few episodes, like things are going okay, you're like, oh, this is really working for me, and you're finding very time poor, it's a great idea to hire someone to help you out with your podcast. So I have a podcast manager who edits my episodes, uploads them, and then like writes the show notes for me. One of the best things I've ever invested in. And she's like one of my like longest term people that I've worked with in terms of like freelancers. And she's a really nice lady. Her name is Kate. I will put, again, I'll put a link in the show notes so you can contact her if you happen to be interested in hiring someone to help you with podcasting. She's just really, really awesome. Just highly, highly recommend. I've not had any issues with her. She's really, really nice. So you could hire someone. And of course, when it comes to like doing guest episodes, if you ever wanted to have a guest on, like a lot of time you can use those like Google Meet type things. I don't know. There's probably loads of different, softwares out there for recording two people chatting, but I just personally use Zoom. I have a free plan, so there's like a 40-minute limit. But when I was doing a lot more guest episodes, I paid for a plan to do longer episodes. But yeah, I mean, that's an option there too. And then you have to have, that's like for the recording and the editing and stuff, but you do actually have to host the podcast somewhere. And so I use Buzzsprout for hosting. It's really, really awesome. Again, highly recommend. I'm only listing things here that I use and love. It's just like a great platform, and it's free for about 2 hours a month. But then there's like this expiration on your episodes after a couple of months, like 90 days. No, so what I would recommend is that you like join for free, and you just for your first couple of months, maybe you could like record a couple of episodes, like 2 hours worth a month, and then see if podcasting feels like it's right for you. That's a great free way to start. I always love when there's like a free option. But of course, once you realize it's great for you, you're going to want to upgrade just so you don't lose your episodes and have them expire. But it's just good to do a trial. So I am using a paid plan. It's about $12 a month, which is not crazy high. I don't think that's not like overly expensive or anything like that. And that allows me to record a lot more episodes and not have them expire and stuff. Anyway, I have a link. Again, I'll put in the show notes just so you can check out Buzzsprout. But it's an affiliate link. And the only reason I'm sharing it, not just, I mean, obviously, like I said, I love and use Buzzsprout, but because it actually benefits you, I think you get like a $20 credit when you use someone's link. So always worthwhile sharing. I thought that'd be worthwhile sharing. So if you want to use my link, that would actually benefit you. Might, cover some of your costs. Anyway, after you've sort of got all those main things, you start looking at like the little kind of finesse final things. I actually found someone on Fiverr, I think it was, for my little intro that I had, my little intro and outro, which I paid for. And I just kind of felt like it gave like a professional vibe. But honestly, if I was doing a podcast again, I don't even know if I'd bother. I know for a fact that I often skip intros and just like skip 30 seconds or whatever. So if you want to just record your own little intro or not even bother having one, I totally support that too. And then again, that would be free. So that's an option. You do have to have like a little artwork for your podcast. And I did mine myself, which is super obvious because it's really cringy. And I kind of regret that I never just hired someone to do a pretty fancy one. Maybe one day I will. Honestly, the only thing that's ever held me back, because I love hiring and I'm sure there'd be a great talented person out there that would make a beautiful image, is I don't have a nice photo of myself. Like, I don't have anything that's like a professional photographer, like people have those, where they're standing to the side and they look really like, don't have anything like that. I have a lot of selfies on my phone. And in full disclosure, this is like last year or so. Right now I'm like 3rd trimester of pregnancy recording this. By the time you're listening to this, I will have a baby in theory. But I don't even look glamorous for a selfie right now. Anyway, so that's just my little ramble. But anyway, after you've done all that kind of setup, just on the day-to-day of like, okay, well, once I've set my podcast up and like I've launched it per se, which I think is great to do like a little launch and really, push it to everybody, that's in your audience, you can sort of look at how often you'd actually put out content. And I think weekly is the best, but fortnightly is the other option. That's what I'm doing at the moment because I'm really time poor, but at least you're showing up in a really consistent way. And then finally, in terms of like episode length, I would just say, I think short and sweet is good. 10-15 minutes is great. And you can go to about 20-30 minutes too. I don't think people want to listen to hour-long episodes. I think that's a bit much. So I try to limit myself from rambling, but it's really, really hard. And more on this episode is going about 20 minutes. So that's a good thing I'm wrapping it up in a second. But yeah, that is my thoughts. I haven't covered literally everything. I mean, there's so much you could probably talk about when it comes to what you should do in your episodes in terms of scripting and topics and everything. But I kind of just wanted to give as much information as I could. And I really, really hope that has helped. If you are interested in podcasting, I wish you the best of luck. And I really hope you've gotten some great tips from this. Like I said, I will put links in the show notes to all of those things. Just, this is actually more for me than you or for Kate to remind myself, but I'm going to try to link to the course I took. I will link to Buzzsprout, Audacity. I think that was all the things I was going to link to. Gosh, I don't know. The Samson mic and Kate's information. I'll try to link to all those things that I can. And I really hope that some of them help. Have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.